close to 5 years have passed since the release of Whole Lotta Red, and 2 years of promo and rollout have taken place, and there were even delays the day of, with the album originally scheduled to come out on Friday, 12 a.m. Eastern Time, but then being pushed back to 12 a.m. Pacific Time. Now, luckily for me, I live on the West Coast, so I only had to stay up till about 12 to hit that time. Duh, obviously. But like, even then, the album didn't come out. I waited until like 1 in the morning. Then I just went to bed, and luckily, it was there that morning. But we finally have I Am Music. And in my previous video, I spoke on the expectations for this album and how they're going to be damn near unattainable due to the amount of anticipation Carti has built up for this album. And I think looking back on that take, it's only been a few days, but looking back on that take, I think that that was a very good take because it feels like people were expecting this to be the album of the decade, the greatest album of all time. What's good, YouTube? It's Justice I Used to Be Paying. Today I'm back with another video, and in this video, I'm going to be telling you whether it was worth the wait or not for I Am Music. But before I get into that, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Do all those things. It helps me out a ton. Just looking online and seeing what opinions I can find on the album so far, it feels like most people are somewhat enjoying the album. Maybe not everyone's in love with it. Some people really don't like it, but it feels like if you listen to the entire project, most people are coming away with a positive experience. The main complaint, though, that people are giving is that it just wasn't worth the 5-year wait. And I can't say that's unfair. When I hear that, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Now, I've listened to the album multiple times now since it's came out, and I've definitely enjoyed it every single time. But if you were to ask me, was this album worth a 5-year wait? I don't know about all that. But I think that time span, that time period is such a big one that I don't know if any album is going to be worth a 5-year wait. Like, that album, when it comes out, has to damn near be perfect. Like, you would have to drop something close to like Thriller or the equivalent of that in order for a 5-year wait to really be worth it. Personally, though, I'm enjoying the album a lot, and I've even started to pick up on songs that I initially wasn't super high on, like the first day or the first 2 days, and just throughout listening to this album, it's just continued to grow on me. But I will say, it's just been so long. Like, it's been a ridiculous amount of time. Like, even not necessarily just from Whole Lotta Red to I Am Music, some of the things that happened on I Am Music have taken so long and been so many years in process. Like, the last time that Uzi and Carti collabed was almost 7 years ago, at least officially, was almost 7 years ago, or it might even be over 7 years at this point. And the last time that Uzi and Carti collabed, I was too young to have a driver's license. Now, on this new collab, I've graduated college over a year ago. Like, that's the amount of time that we're talking about here that's passed in terms of, like, some of the things that are happening on this album. This album, to me, feels like a true return to traditional trap sounds for Playboi Carti, rather than the more rock rage stuff that he was doing during that, like, Whole Lotta Red era. And I know that almost everything in mainstream music right now feels like trap music, feels like Atlanta trap, but this is much more pure Atlanta trap. Like, this is much more regional than the mainstream stuff that we typically get that gets thrown into like that ATL trap bubble. Like, this is some real like late 2000s, early 2010s, heavily influenced Atlanta trap music. We get more exposure to Playboi Carti as a lyricist, but more importantly as a rapper on this album. And obviously, he's no Jay-Z in terms of technical rapping ability, but I think he does have a lot of really great performances on here, specifically a song like Evil Jordan, and where he just really displays an ability to flow on a beat and really match the beat's energy. Now, obviously, in terms of lyrics, he's not saying anything mind-blowing. He's not saying anything that's going to change your life or something that you've never heard before, because it's just super clever. But really, the main selling point of him as a rapper is his delivery and his flows, and I think he really does well on that throughout the album here. And throughout the album, he uses a multitude of different voices, which is pretty typical for Playboi Carti. But there's 3 in particular that are like the main 3 voices that he's in. If he's not in one, he's in the other, and if he's not in that one, he's in the other. And that's his regular voice, that's the deep voice, and then his kind of high-pitched singing voice. I Am Music has a heavy 2000s mixtape vibe to it, from Swamp Izzo constantly screaming in your ear throughout the project, to the other DJ and producer tags that pop up, to other artists doing Carti's ad-libs for him on certain songs like a Kendrick Lamar, to even like the random soundboard sound effects that pop up throughout the album. Like this feels like some Deep South 2000s influenced music, specifically from artists like a Jeezy, a Gucci Mane, but more and most importantly, someone like Lil Wayne. And it takes from these guys and their work, but it doesn't take from their biggest and most popular work that everyone knows, even if you don't really listen to those guys. It takes from their mixtapes. And that's why I believe that there is some cultural disconnect between some of Carti's audience and this album. This album heavily leans into those early 2000s mixtape tropes from the Deep South. And if you're extremely young, or you're just somebody that hasn't been fully entrenched in hip hop for a very long time, and you're kind of new to the space, or you just haven't been a big diehard rap fan your whole life, you might not resonate with what's going on with this album. While on the other hand, Whole Lotta Red was kind of the opposite, where it took a lot from outside genres and brought it into that hip hop and trap space, and it made it a lot more digestible for fans of music that isn't necessarily always in that space. It made it more digestible for people who listen to stuff outside of what we typically listen to. And that's why Whole Lotta Red kind of had that effect of bringing people over, and why this album kind of has the opposite of sometimes pushing certain people out. And you get what I'm trying to say here, but I'm not gonna, I haven't been a YouTuber for that long. I'm not DJ Academics. I'm not Vlad. I'm not making a crazy amount of money. I might need to work in corporate America, so I'm kind of beating around the bush here, but you get what I'm trying to say. And shout out to the sponsor of this video for today, Flow Culture. They have the hottest rap merchandise online with anything from rugs, posters, to phone cases. Use my code PAY10, not Payton, PAY10 to get 10% off all purchases. They're also running a special of free shipping on all orders over $50 within the US. The referral link is in my bio, and remember to use my code PAY10 to get 10% off. There's also a new I Am music collection that is available on the website. My code still works for 10% off, pay 10. Make sure you go cop that. Most of the album still does carry the energy of Whole Lotta Red, though, where you can picture these songs being played in a mosh pit or at a party. Like, a lot of this stuff was made to be performed. Carti does do a good job of incorporating traditional trap aspects with new age aspects. Songs like Opium Baby and Like Wheezy, which Like Wheezy is actually my favorite song on the album right now, are songs that really represent that. As it sounds like some of the things that are happening in the new age underground with some of these newer artists like Sky Baby and Netspin, Osama Sun, and the rest of those dudes, while also mixing in a lot of that traditional stuff like I was speaking about earlier from guys like a Gucci or a Jeezy. The production on this album is also just absolutely ridiculous. Like, we already know that with Carti's albums, the production tends to be insane, but these are just some of the hardest hitting beats I've heard in a very long time, and they're really the epitome of what hip hop is supposed to be, taking things that worked in the past and transforming them into a new era. I also really love when Carti makes like love songs slash like songs about women. Like, one of my favorite Carti songs to this day is still Fell in Love. And he continues that trend on this album with like the crazy 3-song run of Rather Lie, Fine Shit, and Backdoor. This is the most features ever on a Carti album, and my favorite feature is Kendrick Lamar. I know that's somewhat controversial, at least if you're Kanye and some other Carti fans online, but I think that what Kendrick brings to the table is actually very valuable for a Carti album, because he brings some of that lyricism to the table. He's not, going crazy rapping as hard as he can, but he brings in some lyricism that is inherently going to be lacking on a Carti album because it's Playboi Carti. Now, I'm not going to Carti for lyricism, but still, it's nice to have that in there. So I'm not on the train of like, Kendrick shouldn't be here. Kendrick, oh my God, he ruined the album. Like, I'm not on that train, but I do believe Future had some good features as well. Skepta damn near had some of the best, or one of the best features on this album as well. Like, it was between him and Kendrick for me personally, because I think Skepta went absolutely crazy on here. Young Thug has some good features. Uzi has some good features, and everyone's kind of pointing at Kendrick Lamar as if he's the culprit of maybe having some lackluster features, or maybe ruining a song, or maybe bringing down the energy of some of these songs. But I think the guy that they really do need to be pointing at is Travis Scott. I think Travis Scott is the culprit, and he is approaching like 21 Savage levels of government mandated feature on every album at this point. Like, there's just no way we really needed 4 Travis Scott features on this album. Like, that's just insane. I like Travis, but that's a bit much. And also, just a funny side plot is the fact that nobody from Opium got a feature on this album. I don't know what it is. I don't know what they have to do to get a feature. Like, I hypothesized in a YouTube video maybe like 2 years ago that maybe Carti doesn't want these guys on his album yet, or he doesn't want to give them a feature because he doesn't want people calling them a Carti clone, because, he has such a big like personality. He's such a big, kind of figure in rap that like people are going to immediately associate anybody that's signed to him as a clone of his. So maybe that's why he never gave them a feature, or they never featured on his albums. But at this point, they've already established themselves. Ken and Lone specifically, Homicide Gang, whatever. But Ken and Lone specifically have really established themselves since Whole Lotta Red. So the fact that they don't have a feature is just mind-boggling to me. He literally put these men in cages before he gave them a feature. Like, I'm not exaggerating. Ken and Lone were in a cage before they ever got a feature or gave a feature to Playboi Carti. The first major con that really stood out to me on this album is the length of the project. And I'm just not a fan of albums having more than 20 songs. Like, it's just not my thing. And this one has 30, so it's just really kind of pushing it. Like, this is a criticism that I have for pretty much every modern album at this point. Like, we just don't need all of those songs, and more times than not, they're just there to bloat the album, to run up the streams and have some better counting numbers. And honestly, we could have shortened this album by a few, sacrificed a few songs to shorten the runtime, and made this project a little bit more efficient. And at times, I will say, in terms of another con, Carti does feel maybe a bit uninspired on certain songs, but those are really the major pieces of criticism that I have, at least at this moment. It's only been a few days with this album, but I definitely am really enjoying it. I don't want to give it a rating yet because it's still super early, but if I were to give a rating, it probably would be 8 or above at this point. And this album's probably going to end up as my album of the year. And hopefully over the next few weeks or so, maybe some of the songs that I feel like just don't need to be there might make themselves a little useful to me. And I might just, be okay with the 30 song track list, which is just, it's ridiculous. It's too long. I'm sorry. It'll be interesting to see though, how the perception changes, or if it does change at all, from the public with this album. I would say that for the most part, most people really do like this album. I'd say it's like a maybe 70-30 split in terms of like people that do like it versus people that don't. But even with the people that do like it, it's not like they're all running away and calling this a classic immediately. It's not like everyone's saying it's a 9 or a 10 if they like the album at all. I do think that there's a little bit more of a middle ground when it comes to this album. But what I'm really interested to see is the streams for this album. The streams and the numbers that it does, because I think this is going to go crazy. This is one of the biggest debuts on Spotify as a rap album of all time. I think it was like 9th all time in debuts on day one. So this is just going to be crazy in terms of numbers to see what this is like. If Carti can do somewhere around 200, 300K, that'll be insane. But overall, I would say the consensus for this album is positive. But does that justify the wait time? Definitely not. The wait was still ridiculous. I don't care what anyone says. And it did not make 5 years to make this album. I don't care what anyone has to say. It didn't make 5 years. It didn't make 4 years. It didn't make 3 years to make this album. I'm sorry. I just don't believe it. But was it worth the wait? No. Is it good regardless? Yes. But if you made it this far, I greatly, greatly appreciate you. Make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe. Do all those things. It helps me out a ton. I go by the name of Pay. Peace.